guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over this great email that was sent from a subscriber. That's from a guy. He is in his mid-30s, a bachelor, he's doing very well for himself, and he shares his story, how he came this close to marrying a gal 7 years ago who absolutely would have been an absolute nightmare to be married to, not to mention using him. And how certain circumstances arose when things were getting very serious with her that revealed her true character as well as her friends and all that. And I'll be very going to go over here, guys, to show you yet another story about how a guy came this close and dodged a big one. And how it's so important to really understand some certain key concepts here. And the concepts are the following. That if you're a guy who most of your life, teens, 20s, high school, college, didn't get a lot of attention from gals, and then you started making something yourself, building wealth, and all of a sudden women are starting to pay attention to you, that's usually because they're ready to settle down and marry. It's not because of you, it's because of what you can provide. And you're going to see the story. This guy finds this out. And I might add how it's so important to listen to the wisdom of guys that have been there and know what they're talking about, like older brothers, uncles, fathers, people like me doing what I do here, to save yourself a whole lot of misery, because you're going to see he gets some advice and ignores it initially. But fortunately, well, you'll see how this whole thing goes. And in the end, our guy's doing well and the gal is, well, not so well. That's a little longer story here, but worth your time. He says, hello, strong, successful male. Recently, I was introduced to your channel by my best friend, and he suggested I send in my story to you instead of posting it on Reddit like I was planning. Yeah, guys, send me your stories. Don't put them on Reddit, because I'll do a better job with your story. And, you know, people on Reddit are emotional. They're usually a bunch of soy boys and feminists, and they'll give you a hard time. After reading the story, he said that I was going to be crucified, running out of town with my head on a pike if I posted to Reddit. And he said that sending to you would garner more beneficial feedback. Well, shout out to your friend for sending it to me. After watching about 10 of your videos that you shared, I appreciate how you and the comment section give good advice, even if a lot of it is blunt, direct, and in your face. Yeah, that's how we roll over here. That's how the comment section rolls. I can handle blunt advice, and from the feedback that I've seen on Reddit, I know I was going to get some hateful comments with no real benefit. I figured I'd give it a try, so here it is. You can call me Alan. I'm 39 years old. Okay, you're 39. And my best friend Mike, 41. It's been a few months since I found out some info that confirmed my earlier decisions. But the main part of my story happened 7 years ago when I was casually dating a gal I met about a year previously. We will call her Sandy, who's 31 years old at the time, and I was 32. It's not her real name because on the off chances she sees my story, I don't want to start any drama with her after all these years. Well, you never know. Actually, all the names are changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. Guys, whenever you send in a story, change the names. Just do that. Change the names. Don't be too specific where you live, where you work. Just, keep it anonymous. And I, of course, will not share your personal info. So, from my high school days until around age 28 or 29, I was that guy who most women would pass by without noticing at all. Well, that is the most of us here. That is the overwhelming amount of the male population. So you have many friends in that department. I had some dates, and one gal that I dated for a little more than a year, but between my school, work, and finances, I was pretty average at best. That experience taught me some valuable lessons about women in general, and I don't have a problem with it. It's just life. Well, it's good you're not going around bitching and whining about it. You understand reality. One of the lessons I learned from my dad was that if you want to have a woman take you seriously, you need more than love to get her to buy what you're selling. That was reaffirmed several times throughout the years. I was okay for an occasional date, but none of them seemed to want anything from me after a night out, or other than a night out. Instead of doubling down to try and buy the affections of the ladies, I put my focus on my job and building a life so I could be happy with. I didn't do it for them, I did it for myself. Good for you, man. In other words, you weren't pissing away all your money on trying to impress these chicks that aren't interested in you and be only interested in what you can provide. And you're focusing on you, your grind, for you. Making something yourself for you, not to impress a bunch of bimbos. Good for you. The second lesson my dad beat me about. The second lesson my dad... Okay. The second lesson my dad beat me about the head and the shoulders was that it wasn't my responsibility to make other people happy, just like it's nobody's responsibility to make me happy. Miserable people are going to be miserable no matter what someone else does. It's just who they are. Yeah, guys, don't waste your time trying to make everybody happy or anybody else happy. That's not your job. Take care of you, make yourself happy. And yes, miserable people, they're not happy unless they're miserable. By the time I was 29, I was doing well for myself professionally. I put in the long hours and was on my grind. Not just with my main job, but with a slew of side gigs. Anything I could do to make more money, minus anything illegal. A 60 to 80 hour work week wasn't uncommon for me, and there were more months that I can count where all I did was work, eat, and sleep, all the while investing everything I could live without. Bro, that's awesome. That's what you're supposed to do in your 20s, guys, when you have the energy, your grind, bust your fucking ass to establish yourself, okay? A lot of young people, they just want to party and travel and do all this. I'm all okay with having some fun here and there, but a lot of young people, this age group, really just want to experiences and just piss away all their money because they think life could end tomorrow. And then you do that, you're going to be working to the day you fucking die. But if you bust your ass and you grind and you notice he had his full-time job and side gigs, he's putting away money, the earlier you start investing, guys, okay? Even a little amount in asset classes that make you feel comfortable, the longer it has to grow over time. And guys that do this when they're young and bust their butt in their 20s, they can then slow it down a little bit in their 30s and 40s, and they can retire at an age that they want to retire, you know? So good for you, man. But so many guys do the exact opposite. Don't be like everybody else, gentlemen. Really, in life, if you're like everybody else, you're going to get what everybody else usually gets. I don't work nearly as hard as I do these days, but it's still well above a typical 40-hour work week. For those people who believe you don't have to work hard to make money, I've got bad news for you. Unless you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you have to grind, and that grind comes with a cost of recreation. Yes, you gotta make sacrifices. You gotta make sacrifices for your time, gentlemen. And the earlier you do it, and you put the money away and invest it over time, it's gonna help. It'll pay huge dividends down the road. But a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to do just enough not to get fired, just enough, and then whine and complain they're not where they want to be. You know, it takes sacrifices, but you sacrifice early on for a long-term gain. Around the same time, age 29, something strange started happening in my life, and for a while I did not understand it. I was still the same guy I'd always been, but for whatever reason, I started catching a lot of attention from women that previously wouldn't have given me the time of day. It was a new experience for me. Until then, I never had a woman approach me, and certainly never had any ask me out, but that all started happening regularly. But I tell you guys, not interested in you. Teens, 20s, all that, and you start making something of yourself, and all of a sudden, they're interested. Why? Because they're getting close to 30, or they're getting older, and they realize, shit, clock's ticking. I gotta find myself a husband. I'm done riding the cock carousel, and I gotta find a husband now. I want the wedding. I want this. I'm going to go find me a guy that's doing well for himself. Sure, I wouldn't have had anything to do with him when I was younger, but you know what? He's good to be a husband. And nowadays, doesn't mean she has to be faithful to him. Yeah, I say this all the time, guys. At first, I was confused, and then I started thinking that I finally made it to the point where women are interested in me. In other words, you're thinking, yes, the movies are right, because that's what happened in the movies. And the guys live happily ever after. Fortunately, my dad and uncle shattered that notion one night while we were having a few drinks. When I told them what was going on, I probably had a few too many beers in my system, but I think I was bragging that I was turning into a ladies' man, and they couldn't stop laughing for most of the night. They know. I had no idea if their advice applies to all women, some women, or just the women they've been exposed to. But years later, I haven't seen any examples to refute what they told me. I'm sure there are good women out there. Hell, I know two personally, my mom and sister. Well, I'll admit, I don't know every aspect of their personal lives, but my parents have been together for 46 years, and without exaggeration, my dad isn't the kind of guy to put up with any crap. Well, good for him. And I'm glad your mom and your sister are great gals, but you don't know everything about them. But, well, There's a reason I have 3,000 plus videos on all three channels at this point, and there's a theme and a common theme through many of the stories I tell, plus my own personal experience, and the experience that all the guys share in the comment section that back up a lot of these things that I talk about and that your dad and uncle are talking about. So I'm sure they had their issues over the years, but I can't think of a time growing up as an adult where at least publicly they were a united front. My older sister, Shelley, who's 44, has been married for 16 years to a great guy, and they have my parents' only grandchildren, a boy 14 and a girl 12, whom I love and spoil relentlessly. I'm the cool uncle. Being the cool uncle is awesome. I'm the cool uncle to 3 boys. It's great. You know, when they're little, you have fun with them and send them on their way. I'll never forget spending a day with my freaking nephews when they were, how the fuck old were they? I don't know. They were like fucking elementary school. Those kids wore me out. I took them bowling and all these other things in the park, and these kids would just go and go and go and go. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm tired. I took them back to my cousins. I'm like, here. And they're laughing because they see how worn out I was. This is 2010. I don't know how old they were. They were little. But it's fun being the cool uncle. So sorry for the wandering off. Anyway, the advice they gave me that night was, at least in my mind, profound. They said that women in general wait to the finish line to pick the winners. I argue with them and use my parents' relationship as a counter-argument. The only thing my dad said about that exception was, the exception doesn't make the rules. My uncle asked me, other than your bank account, what's changed about you and make you more enticing to women? He stumped me and I ate some chow that night. He was right. Other than being in a much healthier financial situation, I was still the same old guy I'd always been. Sure, I was a little more wise, and while not a bodybuilder, I was in good shape physically, but I've always been in decent shape. I wasn't the dream 6s. I was 5'8", 157 at the time. I didn't hit the gym very often, but I had always been a runner. Okay, so you were a thin, fit guy, which, let's be honest here, is light years ahead of most of the population. Half the population is overweight or obese, so just being thin in itself is a big accomplishment, let alone having some muscle tone. Yes, dude, you said nothing's changed about you except you're older and you have money coming in and you're doing well for yourself. That's all that's changed. That's what they do. They'll wait around. They'll have their fun in college and with the bad boys and everything until they're ready for the nice guy. And they can scan the area. They can find that guy. And they start giving attention. The guy's like, yes, I'm getting attention. And that guy usually scoops up the first pretty gal, gives him attention. I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but that's reality. You're not going to get bullshit here. This is the fucking truth. When I questioned them that night, I asked them how was I supposed to determine if a woman really liked me for me or just my money. And they told me some things that changed the way I approached potential relationships. The first thing they said was to look at the situation from the outside. If you're getting a different result, but you haven't actually changed anything, there's always an ulterior motive. Correct. If you suddenly got into like amazing physical shape, or you really changed things about your personality, became a lot more confident with women, approaching them, all that, whatever, then you could maybe throw some of that out there. But nothing's changed, and it's obviously about what you can provide. Like in my case, women have recently started showing me attention, but I haven't changed anything major in my life. There had to be another reason. We talk about potential reasons, but the only one that really stuck with me was what they called the danger zone. I'd have to explain that one to me because I'd never heard of that term before. My uncle said that the closer a woman gets to 30, the more drawn she is to locking down a husband. Where have we heard that before, guys? He said my cousin, his son, who's a few years older than me, already ran into that problem. He was married for about 3 years before they divorced. I'm sure my uncle knows why, but he said it wasn't his place to say. There you go. After all these years, I never asked my cousin what had happened, but I suspect there was some hanky-panky going on. Anyway, I asked them why the 30 is the danger zone, and they explained that if you marry a woman at that age, you'll never know if it's for love or her need to have a ring on her finger. At the time, I could not imagine someone going through the trouble, cost, and effort to get married just to get married, but they reminded me that while I spent most of my 20s on my grind, busting my tail, that most of the women out there spent their 20s sampling the goods from as many men as they can. When they get to around 30, you're not getting a prize that's special. You're getting what's left over after all those experiences that include all the emotional baggage that comes with it. Exactly. Shout out to your dad and uncle for their wisdom they bestowed upon you. The problem is, our guy here is still not quite convinced. It was a lot to take in, and admittedly, I started looking at the women who were approaching me in a much more time, at the time, more critically. Every now and then, while on a date, I would ask a random question about why they were interested in me and what was their worst relationship. Bro, don't ask them why you're interested in me. Why are you interested in me? That's a terrible question to ask. There's other ways to ask questions without coming off like that. That comes off as deeply insecure, like you don't think you're worth anything. I understand your reasoning behind that, and by the way, not like you're going to get a true answer. Oh, well, I'm with you because you look like you make a lot of money. They're not going to fucking say that. Just little things, and as embarrassing as it is to admit, most of the time I was told what a nice guy I am, like that was a compliment. It's not a compliment. I've always been a nice guy, but now that they're running out of time for their own plans, I'm somehow the solution to their problems. Right there, your dad and uncle should have mentioned the nice guy part. If they tell you that you're such a nice guy or you're the guy that every girl want to marry, that isn't exactly a compliment. It wasn't flattering, and I can't imagine why they think it is. The last thing we talked about was the advice I used for every interaction in my life, and it served me well. My dad told me that dealing with other people, romantic or platonic, is the same as gambling at a casino. The house always wins, so never come to the table with more than you're willing to lose. Correct? All this brings me to my time spent with Sandy. I said before that I was 32 and she was 31 when we broke up. But I knew and dated her for almost a year before that. I'm not some Casanova, but by the time I was 30, I owned my own home, had most of the toys that made me happy, and was living a fairly carefree life. My investment portfolio was diverse, and if everything remained on track, I was set to retire completely around 57 to 60 years old. I'm not bragging, just stating facts. There you go. It's not bragging. See what happened when he was busting his ass in his 20s? Working his fucking ass off, regular job and the side gigs, putting away money, owned his own house at 30 years old. This was 7 years ago, I might add, building up his investment portfolio. Yeah, now he has all those years to let that shit appreciate in value. And now he doesn't have to work as hard as he did in his 20s. And when he gets to his 40s, probably not as hard as his 30s. But our guy here obviously is a workhorse, so probably he'll always be doing something. Right there, gentlemen. And by the way, 30 years old, you own your own home, have some nice toys. Oh, that's a chick magnet. I worked hard all my life to get to the point that I can enjoy my golden years in comfort. It was actually advice from my mom that motivated my actions. She told me repeatedly that to get the things you want, sometimes you have to do the things you don't want to do. Hard work early on, even if my goals were not fully realized, would put me in a much stronger position. You can't make up what you pass up. Exactly. You made a sacrifice. You sacrificed the 20s where a lot of people probably you knew were having fun and doing a lot of things to save your money and work and invest it. And now, and then those same people bitch and complain they don't have anything later on. That's my personal favorite. I met Sandy at one of the local clubs one evening. Prior to that, the last couple of years when women started showing me attention, I went on a lot of dates. Proud to make up for the lost time, but after a little more than a year of that, I realized I was spending entirely too much money with little to no return. Yeah, you're enjoying the attention, and who can blame you, pretty gals all of a sudden paying attention to you, but yeah, what were you really getting out of that? Yeah, you're getting some ass here and there, but really? Thinking about it, I was a fool and wasted a lot of time and money. In a year, I might have gone on 20 to 25 dates, and of those, I got past second base twice, but never slept with any of them. Look at all that money and time you could have, the money that you put on that you could have put away, right? But you had to learn. It was a V8 moment smacking myself on the forehead. Understanding hit me like a truck when I figured out that I was just being used for food dates. Stupid me. And that is why I tell you guys, first dates, drink. An alcoholic beverage, a tea, a coffee, a hot cocoa, strolling around the city or the park, wherever the fuck you live, something inexpensive. Because so many gals will use you for food dates right here. Don't do it. Don't feed them till you're fucking them. End of story. And if you're out having a drink and it seems like she's genuinely liking your company, okay, maybe get a second drink. And on the second date, when you're moving on, maybe some appetizers or something. But by the third day, better getting some ass. Otherwise, move on. Like, people disagree with me on that, but in my experience, it says, stupid me. That's why I deleted all the dating apps on my phone and decided that I wasn't going to put more into a woman than she's willing to put into me. It changed everything. My friend Mike and I were out one night at the club when I met Sandy for the first time. Like most women, she was pretty and fun to be around. She was out with 2 of her friends that night, and we were all having a great time dancing and drinking. Mike was doing his thing, and I ended up dancing with Sandy several times before she invited Mike and I to her table to meet her friends. For most of the night, I was talking with Sandy, but I danced a few times with both of her and her friends. They all seemed like they were having a great time, and I'll admit, it was one of the first times in a long time that I spent time and didn't seem forced. There was no jumping into bed that night, and for the most part, it was plenty of PG rated. Well, no offense, but based on your description of yourself, you're not the guy that girls sleep with on the first date or the first meeting. No offense. And I'll tell you something. Sandy did give me a kiss on the cheek before she and her friends left, and I saw that Mike also got a kiss from one of the friends before they left. Oh joy, kiss on the cheek. Not an ideal night, but better than most. I don't think anybody exchanged phone numbers. It was just a fun night. Okay. And by the way, yeah, you can have a chick that you met out, maybe you hooked up that night, one-nighter, or on the first date you hooked up. Well, they're fun for dates, but they ain't girlfriend material. Let me make that clear. If you were just trying to get some, I got no problem if she's not hooking up with you if you're looking for a girlfriend, yeah, I got no problem if she's not hooking up with you on the first night or date or anything like that. No problem at all, because I'd be like, that's not girlfriend material. Or even the second one. But by the third one, okay, that's different. So the next couple of months, the first random meeting turned into planned meetings at the same club, and the more time I spent with Sandy, the more I liked her personally and her personality. It was after about 3 months when she asked me out, or when she asked me when I was going to ask her out on a date, and that she liked me and was waiting for me to take the next step. I know I was taking my time, and from what Mike told me, he had already slept with one of her friends at the time. I love that guy, but I really hated him sometimes too, laughing my ass off. Yeah, because it's easy for him to get chicks. The following 5 months were a lot of fun, and yes, we finally got to have some fun. Please tell me it didn't take 5 months to bang this chick. I think we've been together for around 6 months when Sandy started telling me how much she loved me and could see a future with me. Here we go. Mind you, Sandy's about 30 years old, 29, 30 years old this time. I'll admit to my eternal shame that I was thinking with the wrong head. I didn't see it. The little manipulations, the subtle pressure to move into a more serious relationship. None of it. From my perspective, we were dating and things were going along at a nice, even pace. I didn't even notice how Sandy would leave some things in my house or suggest rearranging the rooms or how she started sleeping over more often than not. I didn't see any of it. That's what they do. The leaving shit behind your house is a way for them to slowly move in. And that way then, if you ever had a breakup or something like that, then she has an excuse to come back. And it's also marking your territory in case, like, say let's just say you weren't official, but you were dating other chicks too, and the girl would come over and see her toothbrush there. This is all on purpose. So one day we were casually dating. One day we were dating casually, and the next she's basically living with me and planning a future together. Yep. All under 1 year. It was insidious, and I was completely blind to it all. I love to say I'm some super alpha that takes no crap from anyone, but I was given a soft sale that was so effective that I didn't see it when I was in the middle of it. Even now, I'm still completely stunned at how everything I thought I knew was a lie, and how easily she played me for the fool that I was. Bro, it's happened to so many guys. Don't beat yourself up over it. But remember what your dad, your uncle told you, right? We all remember. I know this is younger you we're dealing with here, but they're right. How old was Sandy? 29 years old, looking for a man. And, look how long it took. I guarantee you, like, if you were in her eyes when you met her that first night, if you were the type of guy that she, would have fun with in the college days, that she wasn't looking to plant roots with, you would have hooked up with her that night. Guaranteed. But because you were the guy that she could see a future with, because she could sense nice guy, provider, you got a kiss on the cheek. And then slowly over those months, you know what I mean? Because she would have made it obvious. You would have been hooking up with her months earlier. I'm being honest with you. They make the guys they want to plant roots with wait. That's what they do. And I got no problem with the whole first couple dates, no hooking up. Fine, that's fine. Because, that's not girlfriend material. But by the third date, you're not hooking up. Yeah, no. but she deliberately had you waiting a while and dragged it out saying, I want you to ask me out. These are tricks. Everything came to a head approximately 9 months after first meeting Sandy. We've been together for nearly 9 months when she broached the topic of marriage. 9 months, and she's talking about fucking marriage. At first, I was stunned, and while it would be easy to paint myself as some kind of superhero, we talked about it, and I wasn't against the idea. Smack! Did you forget what your uncle and father told you? I did not propose to her, but it was clear that she had a plan, and I was so deep into her web, I was actually considering it. I'm not sure if it was serendipity, karma, or just the luck of the Irish, but it was about 3 weeks after that talk that it all fell apart. Sandy and I were at the house watching a movie one night just after dinner when someone started pounding on my door. I'm not sure why when I got a perfectly fine doorbell, but whatever. Whomever it was clear they were angry. I'm a generally decent guy and I didn't have enemies as far as I know, so I had no idea anyone would be banging on my door like that, or why they would be doing that. When I opened the door, I nearly had a heart attack. Mike was standing there leaning against the door frame, bleeding from his nose, holding his side, and one of his eyes was swelled, nearly completely closed. Holy shit. I'm picturing Rocky at the end of the first fight when he fought Apollo Creed. Without any thought, I dragged him in and set him down, asking him what the hell's going on. The entire time he was giving Sandy a stare that could make ice melt. I wanted to call the police or an ambulance or both, but when I started dialing the phone, he stopped me and shouted at Sandy. Why is he shouting at Sandy? It stunned me because he called her a bitch. Uh-oh. My initial reaction was to get defensive, but when I looked at Sandy, I knew something was wrong. I asked Mike what was going on, and he told me a story that pulled the carpet from under me and left me dazed and confused. Something tells me this story this guy's about to hear is about his girlfriend Sandy, and she's not quite the angel that he thought she was. The short story is that Mike was sleeping with both of her friends, and even though he never told me, I knew about one of them, but apparently he'd been double teaming them for about 2 months until that night. Have I mentioned that I hate the guy? Still love the dude to death, and he's always been one of my best friends I know outside my family. As it turns out, both of Sandy's friends were married and cheating on their husbands. There you go. And take a wild guess. Gee, Sandy knew about this the whole time? That they're married and cheating with this guy and doesn't care? What does it say about her, about relationships and honesty and all that? Which Mike was completely unaware of. At least until that night when both of the husbands kicked into his apartment door and summarily beat the crap out of him while their WHOREY sat naked in his room screaming at their husbands to stop. Hold on, are you telling me Mike was there banging both of them at the same time? Man, Mike's a stud. And then the husbands come there and beat the crap out of him? Now, you can't blame the husbands, right? But who also should have gotten some... Well, I can't see. You know what I'm thinking, but I can't say it. Good God. This is why you got to be careful, guys, because you never know. A girl you're hooking up with or dating could be married. You never know because they lie through their teeth and their friends cover it up. My first instinct was for Mike to call the cops and have the guys arrested, but he refused. He said it wasn't their husband's fault that their wives were WHORES. And if he had known they were married, he would have never even danced with them, let alone sleep with them. The entire time he was telling me what was going on, Sandy was crying and completely silent. Of course she was. That was when I had the biggest eye-opening moment in my life. She knew her friends were married. You're darn right she knows they're married, and she knows darn well that she's hooking up. They're hooking up with a guy. She knew her friends were sleeping with Mike. All I could see is my own future, and that it wouldn't be long that she'd be cheating on me if she wasn't already. Bro, I guarantee all that time that you probably weren't hooking up. Some other dude was porking her. Guaranteed. And yes, that would be your future if you were with her. She tried to apologize, but I told her to get her shit and get out of my house. Amen. Good for you. Apologize. While Sandy was gathering her things and crying, I asked Mike how he didn't know they were married, and he showed me his phone. He pulled up their Facebook accounts, and at first I did not see it, but he pointed out to me. All of her friends were women, and they all had similar accounts. It was strange that one of them didn't have any male friends. But after a while looking through their friend group, it was insane that none of them had any other men on their friends list. In other words, they all had separate Facebook accounts. There's probably the Facebook account that their husbands and families know about, and there's their cheating friend Facebook account that guys can look up and all that to not make the connection they're married. That's when I realized they had their own private cheating profiles, and all of their friends were in on it, and I nearly puked at the realization I'd been completely played. Yeah, and so was your buddy, and so are plenty of other guys out there. And this goes back to proving what your dad and uncle were telling you. I'm sorry it happened, man, but you know what? You dodged a big one. There's no chance that Sandy was aware. There's no chance that Sandy was aware of what her friends were doing, and knowing that, there's no chance she wasn't doing the same thing. You want to talk about feeling like a complete fool? That was me. Honestly, that could have happened to a lot of guys, and has happened to a lot of guys. Now here I am, 7 years later. Now we're in the present, guys. Still single, still living my best life. I have no complaints, and Mike is still my best friend. I learned a lot from that time in my life. After that evening, when Mike came by, Sandy tried to talk to me several times with apologies and excuses. What the hell was her fucking excuse? I mean, I guarantee you guys, in her mind, okay, this guy telling the story is a nice guy, so all I have to do is cry and make up a bunch of bullshit and everything like that, and eventually he'll cave. But it took threatening her with a restraining order to get her to leave me alone. Good for you. I recently found out that a few years after my breakup with Sandy, she found a guy to marry her. Shocker. If she's a pretty gal, she's going to convince some sucker. They had a kid a year into the marriage, and she's already divorced him 3 years into the marriage. Just like your cousin. That would have been you. Her two friends somehow convinced their husbands to forgive them for what they did, but now 7 years later, they're all divorced, single moms, and I can't imagine what the courts did to those fathers if they're even the fathers. Those dumbasses took their wives back. They caught the wives red-handed with your friend, and that's obviously not their first rodeo, and they took them back. And inevitably, they're divorced. And these guys probably got taken to the cleaners. And people actually wonder why so many guys are walking away. Not interested in marriage, not interested in relationships, not even being in the same room with some of these types. They wonder. But this stuff's all too common. As for me, my life has been good and getting better every day. Wonderful, bro. There's simply no chance I'm going to risk half of everything I worked so hard for my entire adult life on the current legal system. Like my dad said, never bet more than you're willing to lose. I hope this might be insightful for some other guys, and I'm in no way claiming that all women behave like this. It's just a dangerous world, and you have to take care of yourself. Good luck out there. Bro, that was a great story, and I'm so glad you dodged that missile. Holy crap. And, you know, your dad and your uncle, they warned you, man. I know they were laughing, having fun with it, because they're like, oh, he thinks he's Casanova. They were right. Now, I agree that not all women behave in this manner, but sadly, a lot do. There are some good gals out there, but they're becoming even more and more difficult to find. But, yeah, you got to be careful. And so I cannot stress this enough. Gentlemen, particularly if you're new to the channel, listen to the wisdom of guys that have been around the block, who've been there, your uncles, your grandfathers, as long as they actually know what the fuck they're talking about, not the uncles and grandfathers and fathers that are a bunch of simps. I'm talking about the guys that know what they're talking about here. And learn from their wisdom, or anybody else has been through some hard times. And of course, don't forget, if you are the same old dude you've always been that girls aren't interested in, but now they're interested in you, coincidentally around the time period that they're getting to be close to 30, and you're doing well for yourself, be aware, as much as you want to believe that the movies were right, it's usually about what you can provide. So you gotta be very, very careful. That's all I can say. But good for this guy, and the story, nothing surprises me anymore, but here you go, another example. So this story, bro, I appreciate you writing this in and sending this in, and this will help out some guys out there, guaranteed. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Give this guy a shout out. Give him a shout out for living a good life, busting his ass, doing well for himself. And I am especially proud of him busting his ass in his 20s and all that. And now showing what happens when you do that. Sacrifice the fun time in your 20s to be on your grind so you can start enjoying yourself more as you get older. That's really good to hear. We need more of that. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.